Hi, good evening. I hope you all are doing well, keeping safe at home. My name is Arjun Datta and I'm the Chief Operating Officer for IICA New Delhi. I'm extremely delighted to be here with you today and I'm really thrilled that we're having this conversation. Today's conversation is particularly special for us. And it's special because, frankly speaking, we're talking to someone who's sitting all the way in France and joining us today and sharing some of the most kept secrets about his career. Now, you might have heard his name in the media and you might have heard about him when he was working in India. But let me tell you a little bit about our guest today. His name is Chef Priyam Chatterjee. And Chef Priyam is not only a great chef, from what I've known him, he's a great human being. And right from the accolades that I know of, and I'm sure there are many more, Chef Priyam is one of India's most promising chefs. And today, as he grows in his career, he continues to do exceedingly well and inspiring a lot of us. India Today nominated him as one of the top chefs of the country. Forbes put him on the list of 30 under 30. And he was the ambassador of cuisine for Young India. Amongst all this fame, what I personally admire about this man is the fact that he is humble, he's grounded, and he's exactly what a chef should be. He's inspiring, and he is also very, very approachable. When I had the privilege of hosting him last year in our convocation, can you imagine the first thing that he did? The first thing he did, he came into the auditorium and he sat with the students. He said, "This is where I belong." So folks, get excited. Get your questions out because this conversation is going to get really, really candid. And I'm just waiting for Chef Priyam to join us. As he does, I request him to join this conversation and start something that's really, really candid. Now, while we're waiting for him, I think we have to understand something. That amidst all of this so-called chaos, unprecedented times, call it what you may, I think we have started to realize some of the most fundamental and basic things. And that is our appreciation for food, our appreciation for basic skills like cooking at home, and most of all, our appreciation for the people who stand behind the kitchens, tirelessly working day in and day out. So, I urge you all that whilst we all might have transformed our homes into little master chef kitchens, please remember that a lot of hard work has gone into preparing the meals that come in your table. Now, I know for a fact that a lot of us are eagerly waiting. I can see that Chef Priyam has joined us. Chef Priyam, if I could ask you to please send us an invite to join this conversation, this invitation would be quickly accepted, and our viewers are eagerly waiting to see you as well. I think we've started to see him. There we go. All right. 1 minute. Just bear with me 1 second. All right. We're having a little technical glitch. We need to have Chef Priyam request to join the live session. Chef, you would have received a notification. Kindly click on that to join the live session. All right, we just bear with me 1 second, folks, while I ask Chef Priyam to just join in. All right. One second, chef. 1 second. There we go. All right, view. There we go. All right. I apologize for the folks. And we're now getting Chef PM online. There we go. There we go. He should be here. Ah, there we go. You know, technology does tend to have its own ways of challenging you, doesn't it? How are you doing, Chef? Namaste.
Technology was in quarantine. Namaste.
How you been? Thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
And let's start by asking you how are things in Paris? Are they as relaxed as some parts of the world, or are they as strict as Delhi is?
They are very, very strict and extremely monitoring right now. But things are coming in back into order. You get to see people walking. There are people on the street. The shops are opening slowly. The big shops are not allowed to open. The restaurants are not opened yet. Hopefully they will open on the 2nd of June. Hopefully.
Okay. Fingers crossed.
Any place which is which can accommodate a lot of people are not allowed to open right now.
Okay.
So that's the thing. Apart from that, yeah, things are coming back in normal order, hopefully. And
we're going to see a new normal. We're going to see a new normal, aren't we? We're going to see a brand new normal.
I don't think so. Yeah, I think. Look, I mean, we are talking about the whole world here. The whole world was in a shutdown. So yes, the times are really difficult and tough right now. But as soon as the world gives a green signal, it's gonna go on a much more recovery speed than it went on a shutdown. So all we gotta do is just drink the poison like champagne for now, like you're drinking.
Water for now, yeah.
And just wait. I know it's beyond difficult and tough, mentally, financially, physically. It is something which is crazy. But I don't think, you know, like lot of speculations are out that delivery is gonna take over and the dining scene will change, restaurants will change, hotels will change. Well, you have to understand that is happening now to survive. I mean, in my opinion, at least, once everything is back in order, restaurants will continue to exist, and delivery.
It's hard to imagine or even manifest the fact that, you know, it is that we can take it out of our DNAs to socialize the way we used to. We love socializing as a human race. It is inbuilt in us.
Absolutely. I mean, look, it's like like how the presidents and the governments of different nations have said we are at war. So this is, I mean, people have seen war before also, and they recovered.
We've come out strong. We've come out stronger out of a lot of issues.
We've always come out stronger.
I agree. So you're saying that a little bit of movement is there, and you're hoping that post 2nd of June things will change.
Things will change. Yeah. One thing that will happen is the concept of big restaurants and big dining atmospheres and big dining spaces. I don't think they will exist.
I think that, you know, today's newspaper read that we lost close to about 4,500 bookings in the banqueting space in India.
Yes.
And
what will happen is the rise of small cluster dining spaces. That will come back again. You know, things that we saw when we like things that we heard from our dads and moms, the 80s, 70s, quaint, small, catering to a very, very focused dining experience, cuisine, creating that buzz where people want to go, you know. I think if you look at it that way, the respect, the hospitality industry, be it an institution or be it a commercial sector, that we always had, that will come back. People will start to appreciate and respect what we do for people. You know,
I think that there's going to be a plus side to that, don't you think?
Of course there's going to be a plus side to it, and there has to be a plus side. I mean, we go through things to learn good things and come out of it. We don't go through things to succumb to the negativity and die, you know.
I agree with you 100%. Well, good. Let me thank you again. And for those who just tuned in, we're in conversation with Chef Priyam Chatterjee. And Chef Priyam, you've sadly been away from India for some time. How long has it been?
Well, technically, I've been out of motherland since June, and permanently I've been.
Something tells me that when you mention it by date, you're not very happy about being away for that long.
No, I mean, life is a caravan. You just sit and you just travel. You know. I've always been a hostel kid, so you know it's not never been like I've never been static at one space for very long. So far, I want to stabilize. But yeah, so I've been in France since June, and I've
Okay.
been in Paris since November. So it's been like almost 8 months that I'm in Paris,
Wow.
and France is going to be 1 year now. So I've been out of India for a year now, almost.
Well,
And
we missed you over here. Last we saw you was during our convocation last year.
right,
I
right.
was just telling the viewers before you joined, I said, I mean, how often is it that you see a chef come right into an auditorium and does not take his place on a podium and says, look, I belong with my students?
But when you come to college, you are a student. You don't come to college as somebody else. That's what you come. That you when you're in college and you're in front of your teachers. I mean, I will think twice to even sit in the same place where my teachers are sitting and you know.
So that's
I mean,
very modern.
it's a privilege. It is a privilege where you feel that you kind of made it, but that's just for you to understand. That's not for you to take it in and start feeling like super high that, oh wow, I've conquered the world. It doesn't work like that, you know.
I agree.
And when I come to college, I've come for the students here. I'm like students, they always anyway look up to chefs. To students, chefs are untouchable. So if I come so close to a student and then still be untouchable, then why am I there?
Those are golden words. Well said, chef. Well said. And that's why we're here. We're here to get to know you a little better. We already know you quite a lot because you've been like an open book to all of us. And for those who are viewing us today, I think the conversation is going to be kind of candid. It's going to be a little over the top, and let's see how this goes, right? I mean, so the first thing, I mean, for all those who didn't know already, Chef Priyam, besides being a great chef, is also a passionate drummer.
Right.
And so two questions. Number one, what was it about cooking that struck the chord, metaphorically speaking, that you pursued cooking over drumming or playing drums?
Okay, so I will take you a little back. So I come from a family of exceptional hospitality people, and when I mean, I don't mean commercially, but I mean genuinely, like hospitable, very hospitable. My aunts, my grandmom cooked her meal till she was 88 years old. She cooked her own meal.
Oh my God!
So exceptional cooks. My aunts, my mom, she has Bangladeshi heritage, so she brings food and her roots from there. My fathers were 4 brothers and 2 sisters, so big family. And every weekend or every day, suddenly, my mom would be clearing the dishes, and then we'll hear a knock on knock on the door, and then my uncles are there with their kids, and it would be a feast again. So I grew up in this environment.
So food was in the DNA.
I grew up in this environment. I how in Bengali marriages there is a custom of serving. You enjoy serving. I used to do that when I was, I don't know, 6 years old or 7 years old. I have pictures of serving with a small bucket of dal and rice. I started cooking with my mom at the age of 14. Just helping her whenever I would come back from boarding school. I grew up in a hostel. Right. And then when I grew up in hostel, I was exposed to farming and gardening, and we had to do that ourselves. And this is not chef's table talk. This is real. When you're in a British boarding school, you have to do that. So I was exposed to farming, gardening, taking care of pigs, plucking guavas and peaches. So I grew up in that environment till I came to Calcutta, and I wanted to do college. That's one. Second, my house. My grandmom's uncles, they ruled part of Bengal, so they have a very different approach to cuisine and culture. My mom, she brought her own cultural heritage to the floor, and I grew up eating this kind of food. My father was very Western. My uncles were very modern Western, typical Calcutta Babu Saheb kind of an atmosphere at home. So I grew up eating quiche, puffs, pudding, along with jhol, jhal, and chochori and shukto. That was my education. food education.
Wow. So you got color. So in a way, what you're saying and what I understand is you pretty much got culinary education from a very early age.
Very, very early age.
You were
Unknowingly.
taught about regional food, huh?
Unknowingly. Unknowingly,
Unknowing.
I
Was it a
I
conscious
got
effort?
educated. Like, one of the only and probably the most fondest memories of my father with me is that going to market with him on every Sunday and picking up lamb and meat for the house. Because you know,
Yeah.
like how in other parts of the world, eating chicken is a family affair. You eat chicken on
Yeah.
every weekend, especially in France. Every Sunday, it's chicken and pareros. For
Okay.
us Bengalis, every Sunday is mutton, and it's
Right.
like patla mangsher jhol. You know, it's like it's a typical Calcutta mutton jhol with rice or luchi.
All right. All right.
That's a typical meal, and that's my memory with my father going to the market, greeting vendors, greeting suppliers. That dialogue, you know, that relationship building I saw when I was
So
like a toddler.
what you grew so in a nutshell, what you grew up doing is what most television shows now orchestrate. They show that okay, a chef should go to the vendors, they should go
Yeah,
to the farmers market. You pretty much did it naturally.
I did that naturally. I'm very grateful to my school. I'm very grateful to my surroundings. And then what happened was when I was growing up, I had no clue of choosing cuisine as my profession. I was hell bent on joining the army or getting into creative line. No other window for me. Then I had a bad ankle injury. I knew my medicals will not go through. And then I spoke to my mom. I said, I don't know what to do. My mom said, I raised you as an independent kid. So the consequences and the pleasures of life is going to be yours. So you decide what you want to do and let me know, because I don't want you to waste time. And that's been a very core thing in my house. I love mistakes. Anybody who works with me make tremendous amount of mistakes. Mistakes intrigues me because, you know, in mistake you can find a lot of new things.
Yeah.
Because mistakes takes the exact amount of innovation that an innovation will take.
That's an interesting point of view. Yeah, I agree with that.
There is nothing called failure in life. There's nothing called failure in life because both takes the same amount of dedication.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So tell me, we were on the road about cooking, and you said that you started very early. Then, what about the drums? How did that happen for you?
Well, I was exposed to music in school. Like I grew up in a school where curriculars were like extracurricular was really encouraged.
Okay.
Alongside education. My father could play the tabla. My uncles played 16 instruments. My sister dances. My mother writes poetry. So again, coming back to the family of that was
That's a big family of creative people there.
Yeah, grandfather was an ace painter back in his time with the British Raj and stuff like that. So I grew up in that environment. I enjoyed playing drums and music because it fascinated me.
Wow.
Um,
All right. All right.
and then
So
and then back in college, I became a professional drummer. I had two bands. We played everywhere, almost everywhere in India. All the pubs, all the clubs, like 3-4 big competitions. And I was like hell bent, like, okay, this is it. I'm gonna do music all my life.
all right. This was when you were in. This was when you were in hotel management school, or before
I
that?
was already in hotel management school. The only class I would attend in the hotel management college, my college, was the production class. Even till today, my teachers know the only class I attended 3 full years of my college degree was the production class. By the second year of college, and hello, nobody follow this, huh? By the second year of college, by the front office teacher, he forgot my name because I didn't do a single class of front office. I was branded the guy who's doing a specialty course in a hotel management college, which is food production. That is my history. Even till today, my teachers, they tell me that
So you were either playing the drums or you were cooking. That was it.
I was
really.
either playing the drums or cooking. You got that completely right. And in fact, I was playing the drums till third year.
As long as you didn't play the drums in the kitchen, man.
More
Good.
than
So you had your bands. You had your bands going on. So what divided? What made you choose? How did you choose?
realization hits you in different angles. For me, it was a breakup. So for me, it was a mega breakup. You know, like
All right.
it was a very, very
So no song did it for you, a dish did it for you then.
no. A girl did it for me, and I'm very, very happy. I'm very, very, very blessed to have achieved all the milestones in my life because of the women around me who raised me, who
You know what they say,
guided
every
me.
successful man has a woman behind them, and for you, that's
Women
going to
should
be
never be
true.
behind a man. Woman is always ahead of a man. Always.
Well said. Well said. I second that.
Always. Always. Then the breakup actually changed everything. Like, I got a shock of my life. I like, bye Urja, you know, wake up. I spoke to my mom one day and she said, okay, time to put the pedal on and go for it. And I spoke to my cousin sister who was a big name in the industry, like 16 years with Taj and Royal Mirage and a lot of other places, big places, big name. I don't want to mention that now, but I told her that I want to get into this. She said, yeah, okay, no problem. I'll put you here. I'll put you there. I said, no, I want to pay for my penance. I want you to put me in the farthest corner of your branch and probably the lowest. Then she asked me, why do you want to do this? I said, because I'm a hustler. I don't want anything easy in my life because I'm not ready for it. I'm not ready for it. You will give me a sous chef job today, and then I will not be able to do it. I'm going to make a fool of myself. I'm going to make a fool of you also. So I don't want that in my life. I want to grow. So then I went. That's how my life changed. I left music for a while. Also, you know, when I look back now, drumming was an extremely serious hobby. Extremely serious hobby. It was never like a mainstream. Like you either have to be Vishal Shekhar or you have to be Pandit Ravi Shankar to continue music all your life. Anywhere in between, nahi hoga.
then
Because
it's a serious hobby. So then it's a serious hobby.
Yeah.
It's kind of like what we talk when we talk to prospective students. We ask them that please understand or rather define for yourself. Are you pursuing a hobby? And then if that is what has brought you to us, then please join a hobby course.
Bilkul.
Because don't mistake a hobby for a profession. Otherwise, you made a very bad profession or a very bad hobby.
You made your life miserable, basically.
Yeah.
You made your life
by doing it. So God be kind to the people who are going to eat your food then.
Absolutely.
Or listen to music. Or listen to your music.
Absolutely. God won't be kind, and the people also won't be kind.
So when you started, you were in hotel management school, and I think this is a word that almost all of us grew up with in the same generation. We didn't hear much of culinary schools. You know, as this industry has evolved in the last 15-20 years in India.
Absolutely.
The term culinary school has become more and more popular.
Yes.
But in today's scenario, tell me something. What would weigh out a culinary school over a hotel management school when it comes to, I mean, I have all the respect for hotel management schools, don't get me wrong, but what would weigh out a culinary school over a hotel management school when it comes to becoming a chef? What are the skills or what are the things that you feel work?
You see, when you choose to become a chef, you are by default exposed to front of the house, back of the house, and finances. That is by default. Yeah. So for that, somebody doesn't have to go to a hotel school. Really doesn't have to go to a hotel school.
Right.
Right. For that, one should choose the core subject, the core competency, and then go for it at a young age, achieve what they have to achieve, and start fresh, and build that profile of experience, which is very important. If somebody starts at 19, by the time they are 20, 22, they finish their studies. It's a great start. You don't have to even. I'm sorry. I think college is finished by the time people are 19 years old, so they can start early. You start at 20, and you build a repertoire of 3 years as a commie. And as soon as you're 24, you hit a demi chef de partie. You stay for 2 years. As soon as you're 26, you're either a chef de partie or a sous chef based on your caliber. By the time you're 30, you're a head chef, and a head chef with proper gumption. You know, not just a head chef by name. Yeah. So this goal is very important, and this goal only a specialty school can give you, where you are focused on one track. Like I was very blessed when I did my internship with Park Hyatt Goa. 7 months I did only kitchen. It was told, it was taught to us that you will only
That
do
must have been that must have been a little rare, don't you think, Chef? I mean, right till
was very
today,
rare.
I know a
It,
lot of hotel schools that send their students to hotels for internships, but it's mandatory. They, go from one department to the next and then the next.
yeah, but then that has to change, that has to really change, because then what happens that in my opinion, by the end of the, because this industry is all about people management.
Yeah.
By the end of the entire internship program, you're confused. You're not confused about the career choices you make. You're confused with who to work with. Oh, this mentor was very nice to me. This mentor was crap to me. You're not thinking straight. You're not thinking about your career. You're thinking about who I want to work with, so I will be comfortable working with that person. So in a way, you don't choose departments, you choose people, which in the long run is not healthy.
That's true.
Because you're not
That's
working.
I
You're not
completely
working.
agree with that. So being focused is the crux. Now you mentioned age, and I know this is a very sensitive topic because in our case we have a strict no age policy. We don't even ask the age. The only thing we want to know is, are you legally allowed to work in India over the age of 18?
Right.
In your opinion, and in the general opinion of chefs worldwide, do you think age has any role to play? Because a lot of people have this misconception, in my view, that there is a thing to be called where one would be called too old to join, which I completely disagree with. But what is yours?
I completely. I think I will agree to the motion. This is absolute bullcrap. I'm sorry for my profanity, but then
No, that's all right. Now, I've had the privilege of meeting some legendary chefs. I mean, some of them I'm sure you would know about. People who started at their ages of 35, 40, and today they have a Michelin with them.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, we are all artists, and one of the biggest example in India, sitting in India, if you have to take out all the technicality and just focus on the fact that we are artists, one of the biggest example of success is Boman Irani.
Yeah, that's true.
So I don't think age is a barrier at all, and you don't have to look at only your industry to find inspiration about in your life to take you forward in life. Inspiration comes from every creek and corner. Opportunity is like a glass of water you can't say no to. No one says no to a glass of water.
That's true. That's true.
All
right. So now we're going to talk a little bit about food since we're on the subject. Listen, you've been in France for almost a year. You mentioned. I'm sure you come very close to to Indian food, and you've seen a different perspective of it. Indian food has been popular outside India for many decades.
Right.
How, in your opinion, has that perception changed? Has it improved? Has it deteriorated? Has it been stable? What is your opinion?
Look, I think of course, the cuisine is very superior, and the cuisine is appreciated and enjoyed everywhere. Because of the fact that this is probably one of those cuisines that hits all the five senses of umami.
Yeah.
Indian food, be it anything, you eat whatever you want to eat, it will all hit you: salt, sugar, acid, heat, and goodness, right? But there is a misconception about the fact it's in the psyche that Indian food is only spicy.
Yeah.
Dude, Thai food is 10 times spicier than Indian food. Filipino food, some of the Filipino gravies will make you remember all the people who died in your family. Mexican food, for that fact.
Yeah.
Then how can you just perceive Indian food?
And ironically,
spicy?
we still get the most blandest version of Mexican food when we travel.
Right.
We still get the basic, burritos and tacos.
Absolutely. So there is a misconception, along with the fact that Indian food is like super, super nice. And also, you see, the thing is that a lot of people don't really know the complexities of our food because we kind of have not upheld regional cuisine, which is happening now. Now people are talking about regional food, bringing back those regional cuisine, going back ancient history.
So tell me something. Do you see regional food coming up in countries like France or overseas? Do you see that happening?
France is all about regional food.
No, I'm talking about Indian regional food.
Indian regional food coming to France, coming to Europe, not yet. No.
Not yet.
England, yes, because of course England is the white version of India anyway. So
it's a motherland. All right.
So England, yes, but rest of the places, no. Rest of the places, Indian food is showcased and perceived as the top 20 dishes that whole world knows about Indian food. But that's
Yeah.
not Indian food. There are a lot of chefs who are changing it, for sure.
Yeah.
Sujan in New York, Chef Sujan is changing it. And Chef Atul with his new venture in London with Kanishka.
Yeah.
He's
A lot
got,
of chefs. London, I think you're right. So the
you've got
whole
Jitin Joshi doing some
food there
crazy
has been
stuff.
very, very good.
Right. So overall, the storm of this Indian thing is yet to happen. We are still putting our foot there. Having said that, we also have to understand that the perspective of the cuisine needs to change with time to time. This is very important. Very, very important. Or else we will be known as a cuisine that's dinosauric, like fossil.
Yeah.
No one talks about the modernity of this cuisine. But by modernity, I don't mean gas, foam, and all the other aspect of it. Modernity is the thought process. How you wanna how can you? Everyone talks about creme caramel.
Yeah.
If you take the caramel out, and if you take the caramel out and if you make shards of meringue, that shards become shondes and that caramel becomes gur. So you have Nolan Gure shondes as creme caramel, but nobody will look at it that way. So that's a perspective that needs to happen. Wow, that was nice. I'll probably use that on my list.
You just had an innovation without knowing it, right?
Yeah. So these things has to change. This will only happen when you know your roots, when you know 100 years of cooking of your family's history.
I remember one of the things I recall when you came for our convocation, you told our students, go back to your grandmothers. That's where the standardization is. That's where all the roots are. That's where
Absolutely.
all the health is.
Absolutely.
I seriously hope that these 2 months of lockdown has given us the opportunity to actually call up our grandparents or ancestors.
A lot of young guns, they keep calling me, they keep sending me texts, what to do, what can I do. There's a very, 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 very good lad from your college. He's actually, I don't remember his name. I'll find out and tell you. He's actually made a calendar and repertoire of the recipes that he wishes to learn during this time because he wants to pursue French food. I was blown by this guy. He's 20 years old.
Okay.
A 20-year-old lad who calls me at 3 o'clock my time, which is 6 o'clock his time. He's still awake and he's studying and cooking. These are the kind of chefs you want to work with. These are the kind of aspiring people you want to associate yourself with.
Well, I think I've got to give you credit, Chef. You're the ones who are putting that inspiration in them. I mean, when you came and all those dignitaries came, you all really, really gave some good inspiration to them. And I think it's commendable because these are the kind of things you don't see in books. No book's going to tell you this. The books are going to tell you what they have to tell you, but they don't tell you what is the hour.
I completely agree. See, students have to understand that a college, an institution, and parents has got no difference. I'll tell you why. Because your mom and dad only holds your hand and makes you stand, and then takes 2 steps back with their photograph, with their camera to watch you walk. Colleges do the same thing. They hold your hand and they make you stand. That's where the college's responsibility ends. The effort you have to make. You cannot sit just because you pay fees and then expect the college to go overboard when you don't put effort. It has to be both. It has to be both ways. College will teach you foundations and basics. You gotta go home. All the big chefs that you fancy and you want to work with this big chef, they're already waiting for you on YouTube. Why can't you gain knowledge? Why do you have to fly to Denmark? Or
I mean, the proof of the pudding, it's right there. You mentioned it yourself. Amongst all the people that you address, there's one student who came back to you.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying that's the story of life. You always have
many of them. I don't mind.
Many
of them. Look, I don't speak good of your college because we know each other, and I hold really high regards of your father because he's the godfather of many. No, not for that. I believe in what I see, and the students from your college, they have always lived up to, they have respect for what they do. There's this guy called Anand. Till today, he calls me for guidance. What a beautiful chap. There's this guy called Kaustav. He was very unstable in his life. I told him, and today he works in the French embassy as a chef. the knowledge that he's going to get from that embassy with that chef from the French embassy is very good. You know, then there is this other girl called Brinda. When I first met her, I thought she's just another stylish girl, but she's earned her respect in a restaurant. She works her blood and sweat off. So these are the contributions of so-called inspiration that a chef gives to someone when that person gives you back. You know?
Well, I appreciate that. And I think those students appreciate the time that you take out and guide them, because guidance is all that we need, really.
Yeah, because
sorry, go on.
If I don't do that today, it will remind me of my days when I kept sending messages and kept calling and nobody picked up and nobody answered back. I don't want to be my past, and I don't want to ruin someone's future.
Wow. That's inspiring. That's really, really good. Well, now that we're on the subject of what makes a good chef, I have a question for you. Now, obviously, with all your experience and number of places that you've worked in, tell us the 3 things that you're looking in for a chef. When you're hiring, what are the 3 things?
When I'm hiring somebody at a commie level, I'm not looking for anything. I'm not looking for anything. Believe me.
Right, so first thing, nothing. First thing you're looking at, nothing.
Nothing. There is no trial. I don't believe in that crap. You can't take a trial of a commie because he's actually giving himself to you to learn. If you start taking trials of commies, then what are you trying to show? What are you trying to prove? Somebody who see, the first 3 years of a chef's life is all about investing, right? It's not about anything else. So when I'm hiring a commie, it's my job to mold him. When I'm making the decision, I don't need his trial. I don't want to know anything. All I want is 2 things: loyalty and patience. That's all I want.
And tell me something now that you've opened the door, how much of loyalty and patience do you see in the general generation of chefs applying to work now? Is that getting better, or
it's a fluctuating heart rate? It's a fluctuating heart rate, which you started this topic with, that whether you take it as a hobby or you're really up for it. Because this industry is, if you're coming in, then you're coming in for it. You know, like you're coming in with your battle cards on and your pads on.
Sadly, what I find, and I'm usually not in the difficult or awkward position of hiring all the time, but whenever I do sit in front of someone and I ask, that's an old question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Everyone comes a gun and says, I want to be an executive chef. उसके बाद क्या करोगे?
नहीं, आपको तो ये सब आता है, मेरे को तो और भी आता है. I want to change the perspective of cuisine. अरे बेटा, पहले shopping सीख लो, उसके बाद perspective of cuisine तो बाद में आएगा. I want to fusionize this thing. Fusionize. मेरे को पहले इस word से मुझे चक्कर आ जाता है. Fusionize. So no, I understand. Like I keep telling everybody who when we take people in my family. I don't like to call it team or brigade. In my family, I tell them that, look, when you're imagining, you imagine wild. You imagine wild, anaconda sauce with helicopter brace, whatever you want to imagine. And then you start to clip and tailor those imaginations. What you will be left with is 4 ingredients. That will be $1 million on the plate. And that will only happen if you have your basics cleared. So ये सब बाकी चीजें भूल जाओ. I want to get into molecular cuisine and I want to get into this, I want to get into that. Bro, पहले consomme बना, पहले chapati खेलो, know how to, everyone wants to know how to make a au papier. You first make a paturi mach, man. It's the same stuff, even more difficult. So, and I can tell you this is because I was super nosy about French food. I still am. I'm super, super nosy about French food because that's the first cuisine I learned. I'm a staunch Bengali and I love my cuisine. But my first cuisine that I really acquired and learned was French cuisine. The first dish I learned in my life was an onion soup, followed by a bouillabaisse soup, followed by a potato gratin. Then I moved to jus.
Tell me, was this in hotel management school, or was this when you started working?
Working. I was very blessed to be at the right spot at the right age with the right chefs in my life. Very, very blessed. My first chef was Chef Jean-Claude. He was the sous chef. He was a sous chef at Michel Trois-Gros restaurant in Ron, and then he became the chef de cuisine for Michel Trois-Gros restaurant Au Khmer in Moscow before joining the Hyatt. So he was my first chef. So my first main course dish was the famous salmon and sorrel. Back in those days, I did not know that I'm learning 3 Michelin star. My first dish is going to be a 3 Michelin star dish. I didn't know these things. Now I know what I have in my hand. So this was in hotel, yeah. All those things in hotel. In college, I learned basic stuff, yeah. How to make mayonnaise, how to make my roux, how to cut a fish, goujonnet, dane, and all the other the stuff that college teach you, and you have to embrace that college will teach you this only. College is not here to teach you caviar and all that crap. If a college starts teaching you all that, then okay, fine. The college is thinking ahead. College is building you, which we spoke about that one day we
But
will.
it can't skip. I mean, you would agree with me that you can't skip the basics and jump into what is popular. You know, what is the point of teaching spherification when you haven't learned what a basic roux is or what a basic sauce is?
वही हिंदी में माँ बाप लोग बोलते हैं अपने पैर में कुल्हाड़ी मारोगे तो कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस तुम्हारी ही होगी. तो
Yeah. So I mean, as a policy, I think I've shared this with you many a times. We don't teach molecular. We don't teach what is progressive. I said because, frankly speaking, a chef very rightly told us once that please don't teach them anything beyond basic skills and good attitude.
Absolutely.
Cooking, the world is there to teach them.
बिल्कुल.
And I think it's pretty much what you just said a few minutes ago.
Till today, 11 years in the industry, and I don't skip a beat if there is no sauce on my food. I'm still old school. I want my sauce, you know. Also because I was a saucier, like for first 3.5, 4 years of my life, I was a saucier. I was like hardcore saucier. So, and I learned butchery from probably there's a chef called Anand Kumar Goswami, and by far he's the best, one of the best butchers in India. He worked with Jean-Claude. So we were a team, you know, like those like a team that learned from and we were so sharp when, like, I'm talking about 8-9 years ago. We were so sharp. We knew basics of at least 6 to 7 departments.
Wow.
Because that's how we were taught. And also when you have a leader who's a visionary and not a leader, you want to become him. I keep telling everybody.
You idealize him. You want to, acquire every talent.
You have to understand, Arjun. Today, to become Arjun Datta, you have to become your father first. You have to know exactly how your father walks, talks, he thinks, he believes. To find yourself and to branch out of his shadow so that you are you today. It's the same thing that applies to a chef. For a chef to become a chef, he has to become his mentor first. Mouth shut, eyes closed, become your mentor first. Mentor has to be good.
Mentor has to be good.
Mentor has to be good. He cannot be.
You have to be conscious, right? I mean, tell me something. How conscious or subconsciously should you be choosing your mentors? I mean, should it be the top of the priority?
I think do a research on your mentor.
Yeah.
See, it's like I told you, it's a window shopping business. You know, this whole thing is a window shopping business. The mentor is constantly observing you, and you should also observe the mentor.
That's true.
As simple as that. You have to observe your mentor as well. You have to understand his psyche as just the way he's understanding your psyche. He is judging you by your level of performance every day. You should judge him by his character and attitude every day. Before you know, you'll fall in love with your mentor. Before you know, every single abusive word that comes out of your mentor's mouth will become showers.
Sound like music.
Because then you will know that then you have crossed that barrier. He's no more your mentor. He becomes your dialogue.
He becomes your inner voice.
He becomes your property. You have to own your mentor. You know, like if today I walk past and I tell somebody, what are you doing? You don't know how to do this work. If somebody's laughing, the other guy, he forgets what I said. He tells him, hello, you don't laugh. He told me. He belongs to me. Even these words belong to me. You know, that is the relationship you have to build with your mentor. And when you, so basically you have to become mad. You
have to look above. You have to basically look above the surface level words that are coming out. You have to look at the meaning or the message that the mentor is
Absolutely. First of all, you have to understand we are in a business where we are gentlemen. We have jobs to do. There is no emotion at play when you wear the jacket on. But can a mentor not be emotional? He has to be. No matter how tough. Like, you know, a lot of I'll tell you. I'll give you an example. Sorry.
No, no, that's
I've worked with chefs who told me that, how many work are you doing at once? I said, I'm doing 6 work at once. He said, but then why does it look like you're doing only 1 work? Why does it look like you're not? I don't see that rush. I'm like, dude, because I don't panic. I don't have to panic to show you that, oh, I'm such a great worker. You know, and I've learned these things over the years. I've taught myself these things. You know, so a student, when you're choosing a mentor, please do a proper window shopping. Don't just choose a mentor because he's great and his attitude is so good. Oh, look at him splash on the plate. No. Choose a mentor who's awake for you at 4 o'clock in the morning if you're going through any sorts of crap, and he sits with you and talks to you and takes you through that journey. And the same mentor screws your happiness if the sauce is split during a service. That is the kind of mentor you want to be with, because that mentor is at balance. Work is work, personal life is personal life.
That's true. That's true.
That's what I learned. That's what I learned. You know, Jean-Claude. So I don't have a dad, right? So when I meet figures like this, they take that spot in my life. So Jean-Claude was like my godfather, man. Not only he taught me how to cook. I was at his house. I was cleaning his bookshelves. I used to eat with him. He made me drink my first wine. Gave me my first carafe wine glass. So it was that. I was the only commie who was allowed to touch his books. And I'm talking about 1,800 books, a shelf, a full length of, you know how French people are. Everything is like,
Yeah.
So I was the only one to touch his books and 2 of his favorite sous chefs. But I'm talking at the commie level, or chef de party. I was the chef de party then. So imagine this is the relationship I have with him. We talk about everything. Arjun, I'm telling you, when I'm telling you this, AJ, we talk about everything. Okay? Everything.
Yeah.
I'm tripping on that level of confidence with this guy. During service, he comes right here in front of my ears and tells me, give me my food, I'm not your father. So can you imagine what I'm going through? And this same guy, as soon as the KOT is over, he tells, Ale, Priyam, let's have a beer. I'm like, dude, are you nuts?
Have you just forgotten what just happened?
I was like, did you just forget what you just said? But then I realized that this is what it is. This is a real mentor who loves you.
I think a relationship of a mentor and a student is very spiritual, like you said. It's very deep, much deeper than what is on the surface.
Absolutely.
And it has to be.
Absolutely.
I hope, I take it you're in touch with a lot of your chefs 11 years on. I mean, you don't seem like a person who would lose touch too easily.
I lose touch with the toxic ones. But even those toxic ones, they taught me a lot of good things in life. They taught me never to be toxic with others. And one of the chefs taught me how to make the perfect egg white omelette. That was the only thing good about him. Everything else was crap. So I've learned everything. I learned
Take out
everything.
good, right? I mean, that's what we tell everyone in our lives. You take out the good from the people around you.
And erase the rest. Erase the rest. Erase the rest. So yeah, I'm in touch with. See, the thing is that I'm stalking. See, okay. So for me, having to come to this webinar when I'm talking to a CEO of a reputed college, these things are dreams for me. I don't see myself like this. All my accolades, all my whatever it is, all the medal, all these chefs. Today, Atul Kochar calls me, tells me, Dada, kemon acho? Every time he tells me this, I'm like, wow, slap myself. Shit, what just happened? And I'm not just telling you because, oh, I'm so cool. No, this is me. You know, this is me. So for me, to come to this spot, like, you know, there's been so many times, like I'm sitting at a podium and giving a lecture, and suddenly I see my CTC who taught me how to cook when I was interning, and I start to tremble because
that must be some feeling to absorb.
Yeah, and then, but then the very next moment I've stepped out of a live session and to touch his feet. Because I feel that disrespectful, that dude, shit, this guy, he taught me how to, you know, what do you call that, karchi chalana, and then today he's sitting that side, I'm sitting this side. So before I get to feel that I have reached here, I need to touch his feet. Because if he was not there, I wouldn't have come here.
That's true. I think remembering and appreciating your alma maters or where you've been. You know, the old saying was, if you don't know where you've been, you'll never reach where you have to be.
Yeah, and for me, I understood at a very, very early stage of my life that till that time I'm standing outside my door of a space that I claim my own, I should not show any attitude. Yeah, I am arrogant. I have attitude for sure, but you know what I mean. My attitude is my confidence. My attitude is
You
not my
don't carry it with you. I mean, look, the sheer fact, like I said at the introduction, you are one of the most approachable people I've ever met. You are extremely grounded, and that's what makes a good chef. We keep telling people, good people make good chefs. You know, it's typically the people good at heart that make good chefs. You've got to be
Yeah.
good at heart. All right,
good.
so chef, we're going to talk a little bit about your cooking also. We've talked a lot about your past, but let's talk a little bit about your cooking.
Okay.
Obviously, you cook for a lot of customers, a lot of guests at your restaurants, and then you cook at home. Obviously, when you're back home, you cook for your families, I'm sure. Between cooking at home and cooking for a restaurant, which is exciting, challenging, whatever you want to call it, which is more exciting or challenging for you?
Cooking.
No, at home or at restaurant?
Cooking.
Choose one.
Cooking.
Cooking period.
Cooking.
It's challenging.
Cooking. You mean challenging or exciting?
Well, I want to say exciting then. Challenging might just be a little negative.
Challenges are by default exciting, at least for me.
Fair enough. So you take the same amount of excitement level whether it's at home?
Same. I take the same amount of
You make the same kind of dishes at home. Do you tend to bring a little bit of your restaurant?
All the dishes all the dishes that you see right now on my feed are cooked on 2 stoves in my house. I have a 22 square meter studio, and all the food comes out from there. So this is the kind of food I eat for myself. When people ask, dude, this is what you eat? I said, yeah, this is what I eat. You know.
And how does your family respond to that? I mean, how do your friends and family back home respond to that?
Initially, when I was giving all those super delicate food, my mom asked me, where is the oil?
I know. I mean, not to sound disrespectful, but we love our little fat in the food, don't we?
So my mom asked, "Eta ki?"
Comfort.
You know, typically in Bengali, she just looked at it and said, "Eta ki?" So, but now now when I do, she understands. Also now I have a couple of fancy equipment in the house, so I set them up so they know, oh shit, this is something. This is gonna be Christmas for us. So, so like a sous vide going on in the house, so like they know. Okay,
Oh my god!
if there is sous vide going on in the house, then my mom can't speak because she has no knowledge, so she just has to keep quiet and eat. So.
So good or bad, you tell her this is what it's supposed to be. I mean, now obviously it must be all good.
I'm a very, very average cook. I know very little in my life, and I know it very well. I tell everybody, understand your limitations and then perfect your limitations. You'll become a good cook. You don't have to become super ambitious about yourself. Don't. There's no time. You know. So
I mean, why the rush? Why the rush?
I know very well what I cook and how I do it. Very little that I know, like tiny, very little that I know, and I do that only. And I have a natural, genuine eye and knack for art, so I get to make my food look pretty.
Okay, good. Well, now that we're talking about your cooking experiences and cooking at home, how about we talk about your first cooking experience? Now, though I think you've already given away a little bit about it when you were 14, but tell us a little bit about your cooking experience, your first one. Do you remember what the first dish that you cooked?
First dish was patrani machi and second was omelette.
Yeah, you'll have to educate me on the first one because I don't know what a madrani machi is.
Patrani machi.
Yeah, patrani machi. Okay, patrani machi. Okay, go ahead. So just tell us a little about it. What happened? Where was it?
Home. My mom is one of those Bengali cooks who can debone a ilish mach just like that, just in front of you, and you're like, wow, what just happened? Debone a hilsa. You know, Bengalis are known to debone hilsas, like.
Yeah.
Right.
So great.
I saw
how old were you when you cooked? Okay, so that happened. Yeah, go on.
I saw that and then I was hooked. I wanted to help my mom. I wanted to see what goes on, and that was my first introduction to like a cuisine kind of thing. And you know how in Calcutta when you have a onusthan, like when you have a occasion, the thakur, we call them thakur in Bengali, like how in Hindi you call bawarchis and chachas and khansamas and khansahibs and all that.
I've heard Maharaj also.
Maharaj, yes. In Calcutta it's called thakur. So in Calcutta, all the occasion, at the backyard there's a tripole and fresh food is cooked there. Fresh, typical scene. So I used to see all that. Papdas, fresh papdas, marinating in fresh turmeric.
Wow.
Yeah. So I used to see all that. So that was my introduction to cooking with my mom.
Do you mind me asking how old were you roughly around that time when you
16.
Started shifting from the house to the back of house area where the cooking was happening?
No, this was I'm talking about like long time back, like when I was really tiny. So these are my memories, you know.
Okay.
And even till today, if you come to my house and if there is like a gathering or like a janao happening, the Thakurs are cooking at the back. Fresh food is coming out all the time. That's a protha in Bengali food, which is why we are what we are, you know. So anyway, so that was my first introduction, and then I got into omelets. My actual cooking happened with Jean Claude. I'll be very honest with you. My actual cooking, like I fell in love. Like,
no, but you must have tried something at home, no? You must have sat down and said, okay, no, I want to cook. You know, I want to try an omelette by myself, or I want to try a...
Yeah, plenty. Impressing girlfriend was like making some chili chicken with soya sauce and Nasik port wine and all that stuff.
You must have been one of those few boyfriends who could cook.
Actually, legit boyfriends who could cook. So
I think that's changing now, though. I hope that's changing.
About what? No, we still cook.
Boyfriends can cook.
Yeah. I think men should cook. Yeah, it's therapeutic. Men should definitely cook.
It is very
definitely cook.
Alright.
So that was my first introduction to cooking at home, and then I learned how to boil rice with my mom because I was very weak at boiling rice.
Okay.
I learned all those nitty-gritties of life, not nitty-gritties of cooking with mom and sister. Sister was amazing in cooking. Amazing. Sister, you eat her bread pakoras, you will die. You know, like.
Is she still in India, or is she?
They're all in. They're all India. They're together. They're super tight. I am the outcast.
All right, cool. So now that we're in the kitchen, we're talking about your dishes. Obviously, we can't leave out the tools. Tell us, chef. Amongst you said that you had a lot of fancy equipment in your home. What is your favorite, all-time favorite kitchen tool? The one thing that you can't leave without.
Music and patience.
Music and patience. I'm talking about kitchen.
Kitchen only I'm talking about.
There's gonna be one interesting kitchen, man.
No, rest. Okay, fine. We're keeping.
All right, serious tool. I'm talking about a tool that comes in a toolbox.
I love working with sous vide.
Okay.
I think every chef who has mastered how to baste, again going back to basics.
Yeah. That underlining is there.
By default, if you have learned how to baste, if you know how to baste a meat on a pan and cook it properly, sous vide is a chef's best friend. Really. It is a 60,000 rupee affair. Save your money, and understand what sous vide does to you also in the first place. Sous vide is a beautiful piece of equipment. Apart from that, you need to have a good set of knives, a peeler, a microplane. You have to have a peeler, microplane, and at least 3-4 knives. You need to have. Basics.
Excellent. These are the basics. So you've heard it, guys. These are the basics that chef has to travel with, apart from his music and patience. All right, chef. So before we run out of time, I really want to open up the floor for some questions. Folks, if anyone has any questions, fire away. Chef, I hope you're okay with answering a couple of questions.
Yeah, for sure.
If they have any. And while we're waiting for those questions, any advice for future chefs? I mean, look, we're going through a very, very unprecedented time. So, in your view, what are the things that would help them get through this?
This is the best time of your life. I want to start this with. This is the best time of your life. All you young guns, all you college goers, all you aspiring chefs. This is the best time. Spend 8 to 9 hours just cooking and studying. Perfecting perfections. Take an onion, keep chopping it till you find till 80% of that onion is finely brunoed or sliced. Take a carrot, slice it. Learn your braising, learn your blanching. Cook for your family. Make oils in your house. Write down every single thing that you do. Make a notebook. In that notebook, you should have 4 categories: equipment, product, recipe, cuisine. Bring it down. Equipment, country, manufacturer, what it does. In cuisine, break it down. Food, origin, history, family. In recipe, break it down.
Sorry, we're cutting short. It's just